welcome to a Coded Guitar special on Seasick Steve style guitar playing. So here is a 3-string red guitar, something similar to the famous Trance Wonder that he uses. And this particular lesson, this particular video, we're going to be focusing on slide playing, so using one of these things. So first of all, 3 strings. So what we've got to do is take 3 strings off a normal guitar. So I've got rid of string 6, which is normally the low E, and string 4, which is normally the middle D, and string 1, which is normally the top E. So we're left with what was string 5 and string 3 and string 2. And then we've basically, string 5 is normally an A, so we've tuned that down to a G. And then strings 2 and 3 are the same as what they normally are, so that's G for what was string 3 and B what was string 2, so G, G, B. So quite a lot of people play slide on 6-string, often in open tuning, so this is very similar to open G tuning, so you can get some ideas even if you're on a 6-string guitar here if you look up open G tuning. So firstly, you want to set up your guitar for slide playing. Now, what we call the action, which is the height, the distance of the strings off the fretboard, is quite important. Normally for standard guitar playing, we don't want the strings too high because it just makes it harder to fret the notes. But for slide, we want a reasonably high action. So because we don't want to fret all the way down, push the slide onto the frets. You hear that's like stepping across. It needs to glide. So that was completely uninterrupted there because I wasn't pushing the slide down onto the frets themselves. I'm literally just using the frets as a marker now to make sure that I've got the notes in tune. So how you can alter your guitar is you can take the bridge, you can take the saddles from the on the bridge, assuming you've got an electric guitar, and you can raise these a little bit, we've often got like an Allen key fixture here for the truss rod, so you can potentially loosen the truss rod a little bit just to add some relief to the neck. Got to be careful you don't overdo this though, so just small movements and see what the effect is on the guitar. But an anti-clockwise turning, say roughly like a 90-degree, like a couple of those, and see what happens to the guitar. Raise the bridge, the individual saddles here. If you've got an acoustic guitar, often the truss rod alteration is on the other end of the neck, but basically if you have a little faff around with all of that, once you've taken your strings off obviously, then hopefully we're good to go. So slide, you get different types. This is a brass one, you can get glass, you can get normal metal. This is just my personal preference. Seasick Steve uses it, he wears it on his ring finger. You can use any finger, to be honest, whichever one's comfortable. A lot of guitarists use it on the little finger. I've used it on my middle finger before. That's quite good for certain ways of playing, but we're going to go with the ring finger here. And I want to keep our left hand position like we have it when we're barring. So the thumb, if you can see that, the thumb's quite far down. I'll just come around this way. So the thumb's quite far down the back of the neck, and the fingers are pretty flat on the strings. So don't curl your fingers at all, keep them completely flat. And it's really important to get the slide in line with the frets. So here, that looks to me like it's straight. Because of the angle that I'm looking down, it's clearly not though. So you got to get your wrist round so that your fingers can be completely in line with the frets, parallel with the frets. Okay. So like I said, you don't push down. We don't want to hear the slide stepping across the strings. And equally, to get the notes in tune, you need to be right on top of the frets. So where you normally fret a note is a little bit before the fret. So that's absolutely fine for normal fretted notes, but it just sounds out of tune when we use a slide. So we need to get the exact point where the slide is touching the strings, it needs to be, so I'm just leaning forward here a little bit, it needs to be exactly over the frets themselves. And then what we call the intonation, the pitch of the notes will sound in tune. Okay, so to get a cleaner sound, you can also rest. So if we're using the slide on our third finger, our ring finger, we can rest the other two fingers behind it, and it just cuts off any noise that we get from the other side of the slide. I mean, it's quite an interesting sound, and you might want to play around with that. But to just get a nice strong slide note, it's often good if you rest here and so here I'm dampening, and then the slide on top. All we hear is the strings ringing from the slide up to the saddle, up to the bridge. Okay, so if you just practice some of that, just go for any frets. Fret 3 is a good one, fret 5, fret 12, and just try and get the notes sounding as in tune as you can. Fret 10, fret 7, they're the fairly sort of standard ones. So if you just have a little go around that, and then come back here. So what we can do is we can slide guitar, we can slide into notes. So say if I start from fret 2, what I might do is I might slide into fret 3. And also I'm covering all of the strings here up to this point, so I'm always trying to get all of the strings underneath the slide. So I can slide from 2 up to 3. Or I can slide from 3 up to 5. And if I keep the correct position, I can slide back down without picking again with my right hand. So, which is quite a nice sound. Or I can slide in from 2 to 3. That was like a double slide. That was up, down, up. And then up, down from 3 to 5. And back down again. Or even from 10 to 12. 7 to 5. 3 to 5. So straight away it's sounding pretty bluesy. So what I'm doing here is also just to make the general sound a little bit more kind of expressive. I'm using a lot of vibrato, which is just a wobble. You're just making the note sound like it's sort of like oscillating, but ideally at like a regular amount. So I'm not sometimes. So I'm trying to keep a constant speed at which I'm putting the vibrato on. And that might change depending on the song, but often you want to keep a relatively similar speed for each piece that you're playing. So how we do this, dead simple, it finds the note in tune. So there's fret 5, that's roughly in tune there. And I'm just going to move up slightly and down slightly. So just move up and down either side of the note that's correctly in tune, the correct pitch. Okay, sounds a little bit wooden, that. I mean that's just to get used to the that feel. Sometimes people can find this quite difficult actually. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to move from my elbow. So I'm trying to move my whole forearm. So I'm not moving from my wrist. I'm moving my whole forearm there. And so I'm trying to keep a constant, like I said, constant speed. Just think of it like a oscillation, something moving at the same speed, backwards and forwards. And so that this is reasonably not stiff, but it's still the movement is coming from the elbow. And you only put the vibrato really on sustained notes that are going to ring out for a bit. So I could potentially slide into fret 5 and put a bit of vibrato on it like this. So while I'm sliding, just moving, or we could go right up to fret 12. And there's a bit of vibrato, roughly the same speed there. There's a slide up and down, bit of vibrato when I've arrived back on fret 3 again. So really useful technique, way of playing there, because it just sort of brings the sound to life a little bit more. And we can also use pull-offs. They're quite effective. They're not too difficult with the slide. So normal pull-off, you flick the note, don't you? Whereas with a slide, it's a similar movement, but it's like just a sort of just a little flick across all 3 strings. So I just caught a fret there, so we want to keep it quite parallel with the strings. Don't move back like this. So that again, that's a wrist and an elbow movement there. So there's a definite elbow movement to allow my wrist to flick round. So I could do a slide up and down, then a pull off. So from 3 to 5 to 3, pull off like this. Okay. And finally, we don't, up until this point, I've been covering all of the strings every time with the slide, but we can potentially keep this low G going just on the open all the way through. So, sounds reasonably authentic sounding there. Or you can just move, just sort of angle the slide so that we're only covering the bass string. Or we can just try and focus on one of these high strings. So I could go for, say, fret 3 now here. I've got to be quite careful with the angle. So I'm going to go up to fret 6. If I cover both strings, it sounds a bit dodgy. So I'm just going to keep a slight angle so that I'm not putting the slide on this G, it's just on the B. So, or I could do the same just on the G, so angle it slightly the other way so that that's for the B. This is for the G, so I'm going to go, say, from fret 2 to fret 4. 5. So there's the open B ringing through there. Okay, and really, blues is such an improvised style, whether it's Seasick Steve or, you know, different people playing it, that it's often based around, you know, 3 chords, 2 chords sometimes even. So really what you want to do is you want to get a few little individual parts or little riffs and just practice putting them together, you know. So any of these frets that we're talking about, any of the ways of sliding up and down, mix it up a bit, sometimes cover all of the strings, or just the bottom or the top, or just one string. And then just, you know, see how you get on with that, really. There's another video which is specifically looking at fingerstyle, finger picking, because I've not covered that at all. Put both of those elements together, and you know, then you can play some real sort of driving stuff like the Seasick Steve style, or the slightly slower, more sort of country blues style that you get from different artists. But could sound something like this. have fun with that, and I'll see you next time.